probably not tonight, where a buddy of mine comes out with this crazy kind of Drooby mech style, and
Really.
and we just own him with Ultralisks and Neural Parasite, and it was insane. So anyway, so that little digression aside, we're talking about cheese this week, and maybe I shouldn't say cheese because I started off the week saying we're going to be cheesy, and we had Cats on. It turns out Cats isn't really all that cheesy. He just has a very, I mean, he gets it, man. He's really a smart guy. I had a completely different opinion of him before having him on the show than I have now after having him on the show and kind of understanding his thought process a little more. We had a lot of fun with Cats. So we started out the week saying we're going to play cheesy. And then after having Cats on, we just said, well, let's just call it non-standard. But we started with him. We had Jeff on Tuesday and kind of talked about, quote, non-standard play as it would pertain to a best of X. And we played a best of 5 with a friend of mine, which I actually sadly lost in 5 games.
Ooh.
And now here we are today with you. And I'm most excited for our little segment with you because I know how precise you can be with some of your builds, and so I'm really hoping that you've got some fun stuff to show us today.
I'll do my best. Cheese isn't really my forte, but I've got a few things that I've been thinking about.
All right.
A few things I add into my gameplay, I guess.
Sweet, sweet. Well, I don't really want to restrict us to a particular matchup. I'm just going to kind of turn it over to you and let you talk about when you mix in things that aren't just purely machine manly macro style. When do you mix that stuff in, and how would you advise us to go about using these plays that aren't focused on playing a 30-minute macro game?
Okay. Well, generally, it sounds like you went over with Jeff, cheese is really something, at least for me in particular, you're not really going to want to ladder with. Like, it's generally meant for best of 5s, best of 7s, those big, long series in which you can't just go ahead and play the same standard dry play every single game because your opponent's going to read you like a book. They're going to cut corners, get little advantages, and eventually, if you do the same exact build every single game, play every game very dry, very macro-oriented, they're just going to cut corners. It's that simple. They're going to gain little advantages that they shouldn't necessarily be gaining if you were throwing in like any sort of standard or unstandard timing attacks that could kind of exploit those. And so, for me in particular, there's 2 instances in which I will cheese. One, a lot of it's very map dependent, at least for myself.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm extremely uncomfortable on a map, or it's like in a best of 7, if it ends up being their pick for a map, I really want to kind of use that to my advantage. Obviously, if my opponent picks Jungle Basin, like someone like In Control, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to want me to sit there and play that stand-up, straightforward macro game, and then they go ahead and secure their 3rd base, and then I'm stuck not really being able to secure a 4th just because on that map in particular it's extremely hard.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it's very map dependent. If I don't feel comfortable playing a very strong straight-up macro game on a map like that, I'll generally choose to cheese. Other maps would be Steps of War. Obviously, I play extremely different than I play from any other map. Delta Quadrant against Protoss in particular, I play much different as well. And a lot of it has to do with how I'm reading my opponent as well. Yes, I'm a very dry, macro-oriented player, but there's other players that are just like that. TT1, for example, is a player who, he's going to just sit there and play straightforward, bang heads with you for 4 or 5 games in a row, and try and just eventually outplay you.
Mm-hmm.
So, at the same time, it makes players like him much more easily exploitable than someone like, say, Jeff, who constantly is changing up his builds and isn't as easily read as those types of players.
Mm-hmm.
So, generally, cheese is something that I actually kind of save for more of the higher-end, high-level players who, I feel like I have to mix up my gameplay against. Not, it's never something I'd really do on ladder a whole lot. Just, because eventually on ladder, if you play some sort of like a standard play, you're gonna win more times out of whatever, like 9
Yeah.
times out of 10 or so. So I guess those are sort of the specifics of when to cheese and why.
Okay. Well, cool. Well, let's step back a little bit and say maybe the term cheese might be a little bit harsh for what we're talking about. I know a couple weeks ago I asked you about this Hydra Drop build that you showed on Shakur's Plateau in
Yep.
the EG Masters Cup. And
Yep.
I came out and said, hey man, that build's pretty all in, isn't it? And you said, no, not at all. There's lots of transitions out of that. So my first question is, would you call that cheese? How would you label that?
I just call it cheese. It's cheese to me isn't. I don't know. You're probably right. The term isn't that great, but cheese is sort of like to me personally, it's just unstandard play.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that it was meant to be more geared towards all-in-ish play, like where you're cutting economy
Mm-hmm.
and an attack has to deal some sort of damage. But at the same time, like even that Hydralisk drop, if you drop 12 Hydralisks into your opponent's base and they all get picked off in the Overlords, obviously, like you're probably going to lose because of it. So there's some sort of risk to even that build. So every sort of engagement is kind of geared towards dealing some sort of damage and has to at least force your opponent to react in a way that would force them to either cut economy or make them play more passively, give up map control. And so there's little things you can kind of exploit with drops and such like that.
All right. Okay, cool. All right, well, that kind of gets me into your head a little bit. So what I would like to do is I've got a player here for us to play against, a strong
All right.
Protoss player, and I'm going to just say let's play, we're going to play 2 games.
Okay.
And I'd like to, if it's all the same to you, let's kind of play a little more standard in the first one, and then we'll play a second game and we can mix it up on him some.
Okay.
All right?
Sounds good.
And we're going to just treat it just like any other lesson. I'm going to be bugging you a little bit and talking to you about what are you thinking, and how should we apply whatever logic to whatever decision you've just made.
All right.
But also because I don't want him to just kind of sit back and say, "Oh, I know I'm going to get cheesed." So we're going to keep him honest as well. And after that, if we don't burn all our time talking about ZVP, we can go maybe play a couple ZVTs and see if we can use that same application.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Sounds good.
And obviously, on a map like Metalopolis, you're going to want to play your normal style because this is a map that caters to that. I guess,
Yeah, exactly.
I guess barring super duper close positions. But interestingly, you opted to do that Hydra drop on Shakurus, a map that might otherwise favor us. Why did you do that at that time?
Honestly, a lot of it had to do with the map distance as well. The distance between bases actually, I don't know, gives them a false sense of security, especially behind a forge like that, to where they're just completely relying on a few stack defense, walling it off and saying, all right, nothing can touch me. And so no one had really ever even seen the build that I did at that point. So I kind of knew it was going to work just because of that. And the whole basis of the Hydralisk drop, Hydralisk, their one weakness is their mobility, obviously. And by going Overlord drop, I'm, taking away that weakness. I'm putting Hydralisk directly inside their main and saying, here, deal with these.
Right.
So it just kind of works out, I guess.
See. Well, let me ask you, when you sit down at the computer at the start of a practice session and you say, okay, I am going to come up with a really good cheese/all-in/ non-standard move. And, what do you do to kind of work that out? I mean, are you sitting down and looking, like, for example, if I was theory crafting it, I might say, all right, I'm going to watch some Protoss replays, and I'm going to look for timings when they're going to be vulnerable, and then I'm going to try to gear my attack around that timing. Is that something that you do, or how would you
Yes,
approach it?
I'll sit there and I'll do exactly that. I'll kind of, depending upon what I've scouted, say, hey, it looks like this Protoss build has some sort of weakness that I can exploit at this specific timing in the game. And I'll go ahead and I'll practice the build 4 to 5 times, like Hydralisk drop, for instance. I need to realize when, what takes precedence. Overlord drop obviously takes the longest to upgrade, Therefore, I have to start that first. Then followed by the Hydralisk Den, so I can get my Hydralisk range in time. And I'll just sit there and I'll work out builds and just kind of streamline them. By seeing which way works most efficiently, which way gets it done the quickest.
Okay, I see. Now, in this game, we kind of said beforehand that we're going to try to play it pretty standard. Looks like we got our normal 14 pool, and trying to get that hatch down right behind it. Now, I have to ask you, and I have to also divulge that I've been kind of building on this 14 pool, 16 hatch build that you've taught me, and I've kind of found that against players like I shouldn't say like Jeff, because Jeff does vary his play quite a bit, but Jeff's macro style, when he sits down in macros, is very I mean, it's very fleshed out. 3-gate expand, sentries, do the whole whatever sharken it thing that he likes to kind of call it, where he just kind of pokes out on the map and makes us nervous, but he doesn't really but a player like when you're doing that style, when you're playing that style, he doesn't really want to engage until he has those 3 or 4 colossi, right?
Yeah.
And that's a style that's fairly common. And I've kind of started going 14 pool, 16, or instead of going 14 pool, 16 hatch, I've been going 14 pool, double expo. Do you have maybe an opinion on that? Taking a fast third?
Against specific builds that you would not have scouted early on at that point, it would have weaknesses, especially if you were to scout it in time. Such as like a 6-gate, you cannot hold that early third. You can't hold either the, well, both the third or the natural. You'd be spread too thin, in my opinion. So that should be what's preventing you from taking the expansion that early. But against an extremely passive player, if you do deny that scouting, it is a possibility, and that's like, that's another non-standard play. That's another kind of cheese, I guess. It'd be like econ cheese.
Right.
So.
And that's another way to do it. Actually, one of the things we did on Tuesday with Jeff in our little series that we played is we tried to take a couple 15 hatcheries at like gold bases, which was kind of cute.
Oh, like cat style?
Kinda.
I see.
And it worked once, and not so much, not so much the second time.
Yeah. Alright, see that probe? Looks like typical sentry expand.
And this is all, the same tried and true stuff that we've seen from you before. There's the second spine crawler there, and this is actually kind of scary in my opinion, this zealot sentry push.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of sentries somehow for you to expand, but
and I guess he has changed his mind. So what are we thinking right now? What are our feelings right now about the game?
I don't like these Zerglings I just made. I really thought that probe made some sort of a proxy pylon, and I was going to see some sort of extremely early aggression. So I went ahead and made those Zerglings against my better judgment, and of course he pulled back. And so now I'm just trying to play a little bit more passive, go ahead and get my Roach Burrow, start my Roach production a bit later with a bit more just drone-heavy build.
So in doing this, we're basically saying we're probably not going to make that strong mid-game Roach timing push, right?
Yeah, exactly. Especially because it's cross-map like this, I feel much safer.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead, shark out, I guess, as Jeff says. These early roaches.